Being the author of some of the most popular manga known around the world, having a number of different anime made about his franchise, being a character designer for several popular video games, Akira Toriyama is the man who definitely needs no introduction. It won't be an understatement to call him one of the most influential manga artists to have ever been existed. His series Dr. Slump was already a massive success, but then he started working on his next work, which was Dragon Ball, and Dragon Ball surpassed Dr. Slump by a mile. And after that, Dragon Ball went on to become one of the most influential property around the world. Many popular manga that exist in our generation even today cites Dragon Ball as their main source of inspiration. Keeping all of these contributions in mind, it is definitely okay to say that Akira Toriyama single-handedly changed the manga industry and guided a number of different mangaka on their journeys. Manga industry might not be what it is today without Akira Toriyama's creations and his contributions. With that being said, it is now time where Akira Toriyama is considered to be past his prime. It has been such a long time since Toriyama made a manga on his own. Sure, we do have Dragon Ball Super manga currently publishing in V-Jump monthly, but Toriyama's involvement in creating that manga is rather minimum. He only writes down the main points about the story, and those points are then fleshed out and drawn by Totaro. Even so, if you follow me on Twitter or Facebook, you'll know that in a very recent poll done by Japanese fans, Akira Toriyama was voted to be the most skilled mangaka in Shonen Jump. To be considered as the most skilled mangaka by a majority even so many years after being, well, semi-retired is nothing short of a great achievement. It's only proof of the massive impact that Akira Toriyama has had on this industry. However, obviously not everyone agrees with that sentiment. Some people went on to say that artists like Murata from One Punch Man or Takeshi Obata from Death Note deserve that #1 spot instead. So today in this video we are going to discuss exactly that. We'll study the work of Akira Toriyama and his techniques that he often uses while making his manga. We'll also discuss how his way of doing things is different from others and the answer exactly why Toriyama won this poll. Starting off right off the bat, we are going to talk about the depiction of action. Among the Japanese community and even in the Western community for the most part, there is one thing that Toriyama is very highly regarded about, and that is his depiction of action. Being a martial arts or a battle manga, fighting is a huge part of Dragon Ball. In fact, most manga in Shonen Jump includes battle in one form or another, whether it's Naruto or whether it's One Punch Man, My Hero Academia or any other fighting manga in Shonen Jump. So it is quite obvious that battles in a manga play a very huge role in any franchise. However, how that action is depicted in each manga can be very different. Among the Japanese fans, Toriyama is considered as an artist who depicts his battle scenes in such a way that makes it really easy to follow, almost like watching a martial arts movie. And gotta say, I agree. Each panel in Toriyama's manga looks very clean. It is made with precision and action is really easy to follow. In many other manga, it happens at times where I feel kinda lost about how the characters are really moving during a fight scene. But it doesn't really happen with Dragon Ball. Toriyama's line work is very precise. You can tell every little movement that a character makes. For example, in this panel when Nappa is about to use his attack, your eyes follow the movement of his hands without even thinking about it. Subconsciously, your mind follows each movement very easily. Each gesture, whether it is something huge such as the Kaioken attack or something simple like Goku simply throwing Nappa on the ground, everything just works. Toriyama even makes sure to pay attention on the little details such as the hair of his characters, drawing motion lines to show exactly how the character is moving. This is one of the most unique characteristics of Toriyama's skill, which definitely contributed to the popularity of not just Dragon Ball but also Toriyama as a whole since the beginning of his career. This is not to say that other manga don't have any motion lines, but this is something that Toriyama has excelled and perfected as compared to the other artists in the industry. Speaking of other artists, it brings me to my next point, which is it is not about specific drawings. So starting off, one of the most common things that I saw as a response to Toriyama winning this poll on Twitter was people were comparing one panel of Akira Toriyama's art to a different panel from another artist. This sort of comparison is not only a bad way to get your point across, but also it's completely unnecessary. You have to understand that each manga follows a certain style. Toriyama, for example, is the author of Dr. Slump and Dragon Ball as well. Each of the two manga have a style of its own. If you compare his drawings in Dr. Slump to Dragon Ball, you'll notice how even though you can recognize the style being Toriyama, you can still see the difference between the two. Dr. Slump is drawn the way it is drawn because it suits the story that manga is telling. And not just that, manga is a medium where emotions are depicted using drawings. So there might be a portion within a story where the mood and the atmosphere is very tense. This sort of atmosphere is depicted using the drawings. Then there might be another portion of the same manga which is not as tense, and that is depicted via drawings as well. So to compare one drawing from one portion of the manga to another just doesn't work. And this is true for not just Toriyama but for every other artist as well. For example, just because Takeshi Obata's manga has drawings like this doesn't mean that he cannot draw something like this. The difference between these two is day and night. The only reason Obata doesn't draw like this in his manga is because it doesn't suit the story that his manga is telling. It does not follow the style of the manga. Similarly, even though Toriyama's manga might be styled a certain way doesn't mean that he cannot make an artwork full of little details like Murata does. In fact, if you look at Toriyama's colored artworks, you'll see exactly what amount of details Toriyama is capable of. That being said, remember that there is so much more to a manga than just the individual drawings or the shading. Comparing one panel of a manga to another panel of a different manga is just not a good way to make such comparisons. However, there is something we can compare among different manga, which brings us to our next point. And the next point is paneling. On the surface, it may seem like paneling is not much of an issue when it comes to manga. However, in reality, it makes a huge difference in the manga storytelling. Paneling can alter the entire structure and pacing of a story in the manga. For example, one of the biggest criticism of Toyotaro would be that his paneling is very cluttered. He fills in too many panels in a single page, which sort of undermines the intensity of every move. If Toriyama was doing this exact page, he would get rid of Jiren from here in order to emphasize the pain that Goku's feeling. Similarly, when introducing new characters, Toriyama makes sure to give them enough panel space and attention. Toriyama knows the right moments where he needs to use more panels and where he needs to use less. This ability of Toriyama not only makes reading the manga very enjoyable, but also gives birth to iconic moments in the story. These moments would have been completely different if, let's say, they were done with bad paneling. I think this makes it easier to understand that how important paneling can be in a manga and exactly why Toriyama is considered skilled in that aspect. There is not much more to say in that regard, but you can definitely try this on your own as well. You can look at panels done by Akira Toriyama and compare it with other manga and see exactly how and where the differences lies. I think it is going to be really interesting when you start to notice exactly how Toriyama plans and does his paneling. For now, let's move on to the next point, which is point number 4, element of surprise. At first, it may have seemed that we were just gonna talk about Toriyama's art in this video. However, the vote was for most skilled mangaka. Skills doesn't necessarily have to be limited to just art. After all, every manga tells a story and it cannot be reduced down to a matter of illustrations page after page. However, do not confuse this to be a review of the story of Dragon Ball. That's not the case. What we are talking about here is exactly how Toriyama manages to be predictable yet unpredictable at the same time with his storytelling. On the surface, the story that Toriyama tells is rather simple. There are good guys, there are bad guys, good guys beat the bad guys, and that's about it. However, when you sit down and you dissect this story chapter by chapter, you'll start to notice just how Toriyama manages to make each chapter very interesting, keeping his readers hooked. Toriyama even goes out of his way to make sure that certain things goes against what his readers might be expecting. He went ahead and deliberately killed Vegeta when he received letters from his fans asking him to keep Vegeta safe. And this sort of pattern can be seen all over Dragon Ball. In Namek arc, Frieza transformed a number of times during his battle with Krillin, Gohan, Piccolo, and then ultimately with Goku. Each time that Frieza transformed, he got bigger and scarier. But then, right before he transformed into his final form, he shrinks in size. And he doesn't look scary at all. This, on the surface, might seem odd, but Frieza's final form after that went on to become one of the most iconic villains in anime ever. Same thing would happen in the story later on when we were waiting for Majin Buu to hatch. We are told that Majin Buu is an evil being who can bring about the end of the universe, but then Buu hatches and he doesn't look evil or scary at all. Then Buu went on to transform as well. He got stronger with each form, he gets bigger with each form, until he transforms into his final form, which is tiny. So on the surface, it may seem like the story of Dragon Ball is predictable, but when you dissect this franchise chapter by chapter, you'll realize exactly how Toriyama manages to be unpredictable at times. This is really important because it keeps his readers on edge. This sort of thing is exactly what made people read his manga each week and then keep coming back for more and more. Keeping readers on the edge of their seat every single week is an important skill as a manga artist, because you have to keep your viewers or your readers interested in the manga or the anime every single week. This is a skill, and Toriyama definitely knew how to utilize that skill of his. Now, talking about Frieza and Majin Buu, let's move on to the final point, which is iconic characters. Believe it or not, if you ask the professionals in the industry, you'll see just how much time is spent working on the characters rather than working on the story. You might think the most people come up with the story and then fill it with characters, but in reality, for the most part, it is actually quite the opposite. A lot of time is actually spent on the characters, and then the story is progressed around those characters and their personalities. Questions are asked such as, exactly how will this character respond in a situation? And then the story is progressed from there. Make no mistake, this is no easy task. Creating an iconic character is a skill that most people can never master. For example, why is it that Pikachu is so iconic? If you ask someone who doesn't even watch Pokemon or doesn't even watch anime for that matter, someone older, chances are they've seen or heard of Pikachu. Similarly, Toriyama's story is filled with tons and tons of iconic characters. You can probably just look at a mosaic and tell who these characters are. Their designs are so unique that you don't really need to look at their faces to tell them apart. This is a skill that not just mangaka but also many character designers aim to possess. Toriyama excels in it, and that's why it resulted in him creating some of the most iconic characters in anime and manga industry. With that being said, at the end, I just want to say that I believe that most skilled mangaka of the industry have something unique about their style which sets them apart from all the others. Toriyama has his depiction of action, while Murata's specialty is his perspective shots. Murata pays close attention to the perspective of his characters as compared to the backgrounds, which makes his art really pop out. Some portion of his characters are close to the reader and some are far away, which makes all the scenes in his manga almost appear as if they are in 3D. This is not to say that one artist is better than the other. Every artist is just unique in their own ways. However, possessing the qualities that Toriyama did in his prime is what set him apart from everyone else in the industry at that time. He motivated and gave inspiration to tons of young mangaka who then went on to become some of the most recognized figures in the industry themselves. Toriyama is a man who not only did what he did and contributed to the manga industry because he wanted to, but also because he was probably the only man who could. I hope you enjoyed this video. I am very proud of it. I had tons of fun making it, and while researching some of the things for this video, I actually ended up rereading tons of portion of the manga all over again. If you're a Dragon Ball fan who's watched the anime but never actually read the manga, I would definitely recommend that you check it out at least once. It's amazing, and I think every Dragon Ball fan needs to read it at least once in their life. Enjoy this amazing world created by Akira Toriyama, and I will see you next time.